Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown,
the unofficial sumo podcast
for official sumo fans.
Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown. This is Ryan.
This is Jake.
And this is Mac.
Today,
and I'm Whatta.
And I guess Wada's here too.
Perfect. Nailed it.
I don't know.
Well, I guess that answers the question of how we introduce our special guest for this episode.
And it was
like
a flow. I wanted to go with it.
It worked.
Oh, yeah, that's the kind of initiative that we need in order to find somebody to replace Fleric on these bonus episodes.
Don't worry, people. Fleric's not going anywhere. It's just he doesn't always have time to fill in on these bonus episodes.
Yeah, so we found the closest thing. We found another person of Norse heritage who's big on esports and anime. So joining us today, I got halfway through that sentence and I'm like, oh my, it's very similar.
He is Fleric.
Yep.
But yeah, joining us today is friend of the show, Whatta. Whatta's another sumo fan that we've been chatting with in the Twitter sphere and so on for a couple years now. Welcome to the show, Whatta. I guess this is your first official appearance on the show, isn't it?
Yep. Except for supporting Whatta Gustav, I've done nothing else.
Yes. The April Fool's cameo, of course.
Yes.
I suppose it's after April 1st, so we can admit that Sumo Palooza episode was actually an April Fool's joke.
I was crowned the sixth member of the podcast like 1.5 years ago.
That's true.
Less relevant than Sumo DB, but otherwise,
but still on the list.
Yeah, still on the list.
I don't have the Whatta Twitter feed opened up every single podcast that I do.
No,
I got Sumo DB opened every single time. So
My
Sumo
Twitter feed
DB is
quite
ahead of
active,
Whatta.
so, yeah.
Oh man. Well, we are unfortunately this episode may be a bit of a bummer. So I'm glad that we were.
Let me take a drink of my coffee.
Yeah. So today we are talking about injuries in sumo and our demands that we will be yelling into the wind that must be obeyed. But no, we're
stop
clearly
watching.
Listen to us.
We will give no more of our zero money to the to watching sumo. No, basically we just wanted to put our thoughts together. There's been a lot of discussion. Obviously the specific incident that is causing this to be a big deal right now is the Hibikiryu incident from the March tournament. As of now, I'll get this out of the way. We do not have any updates that aren't already available anywhere else. But we're going to be talking about what happened in that specific accident, in the response to it, and we really don't have much since then, like anything that has happened since then, other than I believe as Oyakata said, we keep him in your thoughts and so on.
Yeah, and so I was just gonna say that update is basically think about him. There wasn't any talk of if he was able to move or anything like that. And I know some people have been saying like, oh, it's got to be really bad. That's why they're hiding this from us, why we don't have any updates. I don't know that that's the case. I think it might be similar to how they're treating the coronavirus positive cases, where if you are not a Sekitori, they are not releasing the name or the Heya that you belong to in the efforts to keep that more private. And so Hibikiryu is not a Sekitori. And so I think it might be falling under kind of that reason as to why they are not releasing any information, as opposed to like, ooh, this is really bad, we shouldn't tell people.
Yeah, and I mean it's fair to say that the Sumo Association is kind of keep a lot of stuff close to the chest, but especially when it's the higher profile the wrestler, of course, the more we just are used to hearing all of the information that we could possibly want on injuries. Mm-hmm. So this one's kind of weird, but yeah, before we get into that too deep, just wanted to talk a little bit more about how just make sure to include the disclaimer here. None of us are doctors. None of us are professional healthcare providers in any sense.
Wait, that's not why we brought Whatta on?
No. I mean, people do call him Dr. Sumo. I've heard it said. I've heard it said at least one time from my mouth 5 seconds ago. But
no. So my experience in this is that I work in childcare. So I'm a after-school club teacher, and as involved with this, and because I work at summer camp, so we have a lot of dangerous situation with kids, I have gone through first aid training quite a few times and also educated others on this subject, especially around water and life rescue there, but also much in general, such as CPR and so forth. I find it to be something that I care a lot about, and I get quite emotional when I see these kind of things happen. And so I went on a giant Twitter storm in anger when this happened, and that is why I am here.
Right. Yeah. There were many intersecting Twitter storms going on. We're going to bring up some other people that have been involved here. Takagaijin in particular on Twitter has gathered some information that that has been shared with us. And there'll be more information there later, but
let it be known, fans of Grand Sumo Breakdown, if you leave us a 20 comment thread on Twitter, you too can be on the podcast.
Indeed.
Yeah,
absolutely. And especially if you share a lot of specific traits with one of us, perhaps you may replace that member for a bonus episode.
A kindred spirit, if you will.
Yeah.
If you also have a deep-seated hatred for Goedo that still continues to this day, you could be Ryan for an episode.
Maybe
Yes.
next time Ryan is missing, we find that one diehard Goedo hater out there. And
I am the original party to bring up the Kagayaki duck walking. Okay,
That
my-
is true.
Yeah,
That is true.
you could definitely replace me on a bonus episode someday. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like Whatta, you have experience with childcare. You have like
Yes.
actual professional training and stuff like that.
Yes.
It doesn't make you a healthcare professional, but like
No, it doesn't.
It means that like you have more than zero context coming into this kind of thing.
Especially, I have some relevance in like information about how important this stuff is.
Yeah,
And
like,
that is why I get so angry about it. I also have quite a bit of experience with organization of big events. So I have a history in the Swedish sobriety movement, and I've organized quite a few like Congress events and big halls with lots of people inside of them where things go wrong. And setting up things for structure like that, I also found very interesting, and I worked some with that.
yeah, so I imagine that also entails like, what if there is a health emergency at this event, right? So
how
like
do we set up, for example, when I look at sumo and I look at how the crowd is set up, I get like people who I've talked to who yelled at me about crowd allocation and pass waves and free clearance. I get those people yelling at me showing up in my head because I think they would yell quite a bit at sumo too. And that's the kind of background I'm coming into this with.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I have a little bit of experience with I am an Eagle Scout, so I went through plenty of first aid training for that. My wife is still a certified lifeguard, so like, when stuff like when injuries happen, like if I love to get her take on it. And just in general, like all of us watch other sports as well. I think a relevant one might be mixed martial arts. There's a lot of head trauma in that sport.
A lot.
So, just not that makes anybody an expert just from watching a sport, but seeing the contrast between one sport and another and how head trauma is handled is definitely something that makes this whole Hibikiryu situation really frustrating. But yeah, so yeah, last thing here, we are not we're not professionals. We're not like we're not like sending this podcast like on a disc to like the chairman of the NSK to like, make demands of changes that need to happen. But we definitely thought it was worth putting our thoughts together so that we could at least have our voice in the conversation here.
Yeah, as fans of the sport and fans of the people that are competing in the sport, we want to see the best for them, and we want to see the best for the sport. And having the best medical care available for these guys just makes it better all around. And really, the basics of what we would like to see wouldn't affect anything that you see at all. Wouldn't affect anything on the dohyo. You just have some medical guys in the back ready to run out and help them. So we're just putting these thoughts out here as just like, hey, this would be nice to make the sport that we love even even better and more safe for the people involved.
For your consideration.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't even-
so
yeah.
I don't think it's a spoiler to say have a friggin' doctor right next to the ring. Like that's obviously point number one. But
Mhm.
but why don't we get into the specifics of the Hibikiryu incident? Refresh some memories. If this isn't something that you've heard of before, it's a big deal, and we don't want to let it. We don't want it to be like just kind of forgotten or passed aside as, oh, sumo's tough. This one was kind of different than some of the other difficult injury situations that we've seen before.
Yeah, we've been watching for about 5 years now, and this is the only
Yeah.
event we've seen like this in sumo.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The well, I would say it's the worst event. I wouldn't say it's the only. We've seen poor responses to lots of stuff, but I know what you mean.
Fair,
Yeah.
fair.
So Hibikiryu, I believe third, fourth division. But
I think Sendanme. I'll look it up real quick.
But regardless, what the match on day 13 of the March tournament, he and his opponent Imafuku were in like a fairly standard match. Like I do want to make sure that we make this clear. The match itself wasn't particularly out of the ordinary. We should make it clear that this injury happened from a freak accident. I think would be a fair way to categorize it.
We've seen plenty of matches end this way.
Yeah. So like, it's that position where we're both trying to throw each other. We got one leg on the ground, one leg up in the air, and both of our heads are getting closer to the ground. Hibikiryu goes down, and just the way that he landed, head first, like kind of on the top of his head, he just didn't move. He stayed there, laying face down. Thankfully it was obvious that he was breathing, but he was definitely not able to move.
I also think that one thing that might have been an incident adding factor here is the fact that he landed like right on the Tawara.
Yep,
So that
he landed on the Tawara.
That little bump seems to have definitely worsened the injury in this situation.
Yeah, maybe maybe if that wasn't there, maybe it would have been more of a slide than a like direct thud. It's impossible to say. It's so, human bodies are so delicate, and something that happens 100 times in training, that position where we're both throwing each other, nothing out of the ordinary whatsoever. The match itself, nothing. But yeah, just that particular way that he landed. So up until this moment, nothing particularly horrifying. It's like it's a terrible injury. But it's like something that, unless we fundamentally change how the sport works, that injury is physically possible to have it happen. But then things get really crappy. The only person who seems to immediately recognize that something's wrong was Imafuku himself, the opponent. He like reaches down and he's like, oh crap, are you okay? Like he's like trying to like, and he's trying to bring it to the attention of the Gyoji too.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm literally watching it right now, and like he's looking at the Gyoji, is like, hey,
Come on.
something's going on. He's like looking back toward the Shinpan around the dohyo, and they basically just like do your thing, bow, and crouch, and then leave, and that's and then Yobi Irashi comes and stands by Hibikiryu for a little bit.
I saw one person on Twitter describe it as Imafuku seemed to be worried because he was the one person who understood in that moment that he could be the one who was laying there next. And I thought that was quite resonant with me, because it seems like the people who were not wrestlers, the reaction was not as immediately strong, but he's instantly looking at it like, damn, this is what could happen to me. I kind of want someone to help this guy, because if I'm in this situation, I want someone to help me. Like
Exactly.
that might not be the thought process, but when you look at the images, that's the feeling I get. And that person described it quite vividly for me.
There's also just like the horror of doing something that hurt another person. Like in that moment, he has no idea how severe the injury is, but he knows that that his opponent isn't moving. And yeah, I mean, like, yes, it's a competitive sport. You're trying to win the match, but the goal of sumo is not to hurt people. The goal of sumo is to win the sumo match, right? So like it was. I completely understand his response. He's like the one person in this that seems like I don't know that he did anything wrong in this moment here. He was trying to bring attention to like, hey, this guy's not okay. Like this is bad. But yeah, we got to do the post-match ceremony and stuff like that, and they're all like kind of stepping over Hibikiryu, laying on the ground. Like, oh my god.
Like, what are you people doing? Help this
Yeah.
man.
So like the authority of the Gyoji and the Shimpan around the ring, kind of like, you know, I can understand why Imafuku is like, I guess I just got to do my thing and I got to get, I leave, right? Like, you know, he's just doing what he's supposed to do. And probably in some amount of shock. Like I really feel for that guy, but then like once that is over and they're ready for like where the next pair of wrestlers would normally come in, everyone's just kind of standing around, like looking around, like nobody's in charge of the situation. Nobody like it takes a while before anybody even like, you know, crouches down and tries to talk to Hibikiryu. It's yeah, this is where it gets really, really crazy. So like how long, I think it was like 2 or 3 minutes before they managed to roll him over on his back because he was able to speak and he said he was uncomfortable.
Down.
Yeah, for like minutes.
Yes.
But yeah, they managed to roll him over, and I can't. Do we have video of them doing the rolling over? Because I know for a fact that they did not stabilize his spine, like with a backboard or anything.
There is video on Twitter somewhere.
Okay.
I could not find it now quickly, but I definitely, there was like a so not on the NHK broadcast, but on the other broadcast that sometimes got the Abema one, you have like a continuous shot from one angle, and that angle's footage has now, as far as I know, been scrubbed from quite a few official broadcasts.
Oh wow!
But I can't confirm if that's the case, but I can't find it. Okay. But I found it on Twitter, as like someone who like screen capped their screen while it was broadcasting and then like showed it.
I gotcha. Yeah, so like we'll get into the specifics of you know what should be done in this situation, like with you know with your lifeguarding experience or and certifications and stuff. You like Whatta, you know, like they should be. Oh yeah, he should be tied into a backboard before they move anything, like right.
Yeah, they should not be moving anything when it comes to like the spine at all, because what it looks like, what's the scared here is that he's paralyzed below the neck, right? Like that's what we're all scared of. The reason that why this injury resonates so much is that while a lot of injuries in sumo, they can make it so that someone can't do sumo anymore. But this looks like an injury that might make it so that someone can't really have a functioning life anymore. And that is why it's so resonant. And the spine is a big part of that. Another factor is the fact that his breathing was not checked up on at all. And this is something that should be checked up on for even smaller injuries when it relates to head and neck trauma. Breathing regulation, making sure that someone is actually breathing correctly, is so important, because for all they know, this dude could be choking on the ground right there. Especially, and I don't want to put it in a negative way, but with the weight that a lot of our wrestlers are at, the blockages to the throat. Like I'm a big guy myself, and I know that if I like lay wrong while sleeping, I'll snort and I'll not be able to breathe, because just the size of my neck gets in the way of itself. And at the angle that he was laying, I was getting quite scared for his breathing. Now, luckily, it seems like his breathing was not, in fact, an issue here, but we also can't know that. It could also be that with limited breathing, you could sustain brain injuries, where even if you survive, the brain could take permanent damage from a loss of oxygen, which we can't know from the footage that we have.
Right. What I have heard is that he was able to at least speak and express his discomfort and asked to be rolled over because he was having trouble breathing, but not like it was just uncomfortable to breathe at that point. Obviously, he was uncomfortable in a lot of ways, but once he rolls over, he's on his back. They've already moved him one time without proper stabilization of the spine. So that's strike 11 in this situation.
I was about to say, like, what number are we on now?
Yeah. No, I should have phrased that differently. But so I think the final amount of time before he gets a stretcher out there, they get him on the stretcher and they get him moving off of the dohyo, is like 6 minutes or something like that, right? Is that what you guys remember?
Yeah, it was like between 6 and 10.
Yeah. So once he's carted off, obviously it's sumo, so everything just continues as normal. Maybe a little extra salt sprinkling to purify post injury, because I know that's part of the ceremony, that anytime somebody gets hurt. But other than that, he's carted off and the issue is done. We hear from his Oyakata that he gave us an update. I think it was later that day, maybe the next day, but that's still like all that we've ever heard so far. Since he's been carted off, all we hear is that he may not have any feeling below the neck, and they're asking for to keep him in our thoughts and stuff. But yeah, like Ryan said, it could be the case that because he's a lower division wrestler, they're just keeping that information closer to the chest, but we don't have an update on where he's at right now. So that being said, that's the incident that happened that got everybody all pissed off, and we have multiple groups that have started on Facebook, on Twitter, to like organize our thoughts, get letters sent, etc. But why don't we talk right now about Hibikiryu in particular, but also just like injuries in general? What needs to change, like immediately? What are the no brainer obvious changes that we need to make? So we mentioned earlier, of course, Dr. Ringside. That's number one.
Yeah, and I just want to point out real quick is injuries are inevitable. They're going to happen.
Yeah.
What we're saying isn't to like, this is how you eliminate injuries from sumo wrestling. There's things
It's not
people
gonna
talk
happen.
about, like changing the tachi to avoid the head butting. I don't think we might hit on that a little bit as an option, but that's not realistic. That's going to change in sumo. What we're saying is just like the response to these injuries is something that can very easily be changed without affecting, as far as I know, like the religious aspects of the sport or the competitive aspects of the sport. Just having doctors on hand and trained medical staff to take care of these things. And so, yeah, we're not trying to prevent injuries. We just want to see better response.
Yeah. And injury prevention can come from a number of different ways, but the primary immediate thing that has set us all off is the response. And the response can be, like you said, Ryan, the response can be improved without sacrificing anything else, really. Basically, if what shocks me is the lack of
there's no plan.
There's no plan.
There is zero plan.
This has been going on for hundreds of years. Like, that somebody can get hurt in there. Like,
It's
varying
the
levels
first
of
time.
Figure out which way the stretcher was supposed to go.
Yeah. It's not the first time you've seen somebody unconscious on the dohyo.
So when I work with children in the forest, this is something that we talk about a lot because we do not always have a doctor with us into the forest. That would be expensive and impractical and not help the kids that much. What we talk about is protocol. What do we do when something happens so that we standardize it and so that we can practice it? Because this is a big thing. When it comes to emergency care, the big thing that stops most people from action is stuntedness. Like you see something happen. I don't know if any of you have ever called 911, but if you see a car accident, there's this like brain freeze that happens of like, what am I supposed to do? And the best thing to get around that brain freeze is just practice and practice and practice and practice in order to make sure that you can just break through it immediately. So one thing that we do a lot when we practice with childcare is like stabilization of the body. Now, in this case, that would be a bad idea because spine thing. But in a lot of cases, this is a good idea. So that you instantly get someone into a position that's sustainable, so that you can then follow protocol further on. But so that you just are acting, you're doing something, And as you said, what makes me so scared watching the Hibikiryu video is that everyone's looking around, trying to find someone in charge. The Shimpan's looking this way, the Gyoji's looking the other way. Imafuku's confused about what he's supposed to do in his ceremony. Someone comes out with a wheelchair and like looks for a confirmation, like, do you need this? Is this necessary? A stretcher, like it seems like they're going around searching through their backup sheds to find one. Like the protocol needs to be inserted, and that's what I'm really worried about.
Yeah. I mean, what's shocking to me is how easy it could be improved.
Yeah.
Like even like ideally there's a half a dozen things that we could change, but change number one. Yeah. I mean, I said ringside doctor, probably point number one. Better yet, just have a plan. Exactly. If an injury happens like that Shimpan, like, there's 5 of them around the ring. Like just say number 3, boom. He's the guy that's in charge. If there's an injury, he takes charge in the sense that he can direct people. He can talk to the wrestler and say, yes, we need the wheelchair, something like that. Like that doesn't take one yen of expense to like sit down and have a half-hour meeting about like this guy's in charge and therefore his decision on what we need to do to proceed is takes precedence. Yeah, there you go. You can have that one for free, NSK. But like, in addition to that, like the fact that even if someone was in charge, that person needs to have knowledge of what to do, of course, right? So there should be some level of first aid training for, honestly, pretty much anybody. I feel like the Yobidashi role is pretty set up to be this kind of guy. Like, you know, when an injury happens in Western sports, we always see, like, if somebody's like laying face down in obvious pain or something, there's always a referee or a trainer or somebody like runs up and is like crouching down and talking to them, right? Like that's the image that pops into my head. Like, where's the guy on his knees, face to face with Hibikiryu, talking to him, making sure that he understands what hurts, what's the extent of this injury, and from there we develop our plan.
And from there, you should have the doctor that they have on standby in the back ring. So you have the Yobidashi there talking to him, and then he waits for the doctor, and then the doctor comes out and takes over from there. And then you figure out, okay, do we need like more staff to properly attend to this injured Rikishi
Sure.
so that he doesn't have to walk on his knee that just exploded downstairs to get into the giant wheelchair.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I mean, we oh god. Well, technically he was off of the ring already, but they did like make him stand up. Yeah. Oh god.
Takayasu comes to mind as well. They made him stand up, bow, and then get off the ring.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's something that I think we should clarify as well here is we're not talking about every injury being something where somebody is potentially immobile or unconscious or anything like that. The knee injuries, we've seen half a dozen of those over the last couple of years where somebody's knee is in terrible shape and they have like one 5-foot tall Yobidashi there for this 400-pound man to lean on while he gets up under his own power into the wheelchair at best, or you know, hobbles off on his own, as we've seen more often. Like it's really just, to me, it feels like they treat the injured wrestler like a burden, and this burden he has to redeem himself by getting his own bulk out of there on his own power, you know. And that's I think that's another key point here.
Yeah, this is something that bothers me a lot when it comes to sumo injuries, and it's this idea of this honorable way to be injured. And they view it as a sort of like, when they tell Imafuku to follow along with ceremony, they're following their protocol. And the reason they're doing that, as far as I can tell, and I'd love to be wrong, but as far as I can tell, they're doing that out of some sense of optics. Like, sumo has always been done this way. We must respect the tradition. And I want to be very clear. I love sumo traditions. Sumo traditions are a part of the magic, aesthetics, and appeal of the sport. It's why a lot of us stick to this for so long. When they throw the salt, when they bow 17,000 times before every single fight, when they do the ring stomping, the claps, the aesthetics of the doyo, the clothing of the gyoji, of the shimpan, all this stuff. It's beautiful and it's great, and I love it. I really love the respect that they show at the end of the bouts. But you know what I love more? I love healthy Rikishi. Yeah. And I love that the people who bring me this beautiful experience that I can know that they're well taken care of. Mm-hmm. And that's really, really important to me. So when I see Imafuku forced to do the ringside, like, accepting of the win, instead of helping the guy on the ground, that makes me feel bad inside. And that's why I'm so worried about this, and why I'm willing to say things like, yes, we need to step aside a little bit from some of these traditions and some of these aspects, because other things need to take priority, even when they are that important.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's not just like a lack. I mean, it's absolutely a lack of any sort of plan whatsoever. But it's just, I think they view the injuries differently than how we in Western culture view the injuries, and it might just be in their culture and their traditions. Like, yeah, you gotta tough it out as much as possible, and it's not accepting of the help might not be seen the same way as it is in Western culture. So it's a couple of different barriers that they might need to get over in order to enact these changes. It's not just like, all right, yeah, we should have a plan, but it could be a full cultural thing that would make them hesitant to enact some of these plans that we're just not privy to, because we're not in that culture.
I would be curious to know. I know that American football is something that is kind of not super popular, but it exists in Japan. There's a league for it.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I thought you were
but
just saying
like-
American football, not that popular.
No, we are
No.
about to fight. We are about to
In-
fight on that one.
In
As a
Japan,
European, it's not.
No.
yeah, well, it's 3-1 today, Whatta. So football means one thing, soccer means a different thing today.
Yes.
But no, like, so in Japan, there is American football, there is rugby, there are like Western sports that have similar levels of contact. I would be curious to know, like, how does the response there differ? Like that, I think that's a point where it would help us separate how much of it is cultural and how much of it is sport specific. Because yeah, like you said, the optics of oh crap, that guy's injured, but we really need to do the ceremony part of the sumo match. Like there's the optics of sticking to what we're supposed to do. But then in a Hibikiryu situation, there's the optics of we look like backwards, ancient, unchanging, unhealthy. Like it looks like we're completely out of touch and completely without any sort of plan or compassion for the athletes that are, injuring themselves to do this sport. So I would be curious. Maybe there are Japanese mixed martial arts promotions as well. I can't say that I've watched much of it, but like I would be curious to know how much of it is cultural versus the sport. The ceremonial stuff. You guys remember a couple of years back we had the mayor who I think it was a mayor on the dohyo
Yep.
who had like he fainted,
heart attack.
something along those lines. Was that a heart attack?
Yeah, it was a heart attack.
But there was an EMT available who was able to come and help out and give emergency immediate help. And that was like, oh wow, that's cool. Oh no, it's a woman.
It's a woman.
On the dohyo? Gasp. Like, and the only thing that was said on the intercom was asking the woman to get off of the dohyo. Like that was like previous low watermark for me as far as like how in touch is the Sumo Association regarding health, until Hibikiryu, of course. Obviously this one takes the cake, but I appreciate that they apologized for that. I think it was it the NSK themselves like officially apologizing or something?
There were important people apologizing.
Yeah, fair enough.
There were. I don't know if it was the NSK specifically, but yeah, a lot of people had to apologize.
So, but what the reason I bring that up is like that you gotta put a pause on some of the ceremonial stuff here when there are lives at stake. And honestly, I would prefer the bar be pushed even lower and say when there's any sort of health at stake. Don't make Imafuku step over the unconscious or immobilized body of his opponent to just so that he can bow in the one spot and then like leave properly.
So I want to push on another thing when it comes to this protocol that we're sort of discussing, because if we make the importance of like protocol is the first thing they need because it requires no new personnel, it only requires training, and then we put ringside doctor is like the obvious next step. One thing that I would think is really important when it comes to this protocol is how you engage with the crowd. When we're watching the Imafuku situation, and especially when we're watching all the situations with the big chair, the crowd has been a massive imparting blockade when it comes to helping this rikishi. Now, I understand that the splash zone in sumo is something that is near and dear both to their economic situations and to the enjoyment of the fans. But I think that it also comes with a lot of negatives. So if we are going to argue from the position of we want to keep the splash zone, I think that we also want to argue that in the protocol, when something happens, one of the very first things that needs to be done is that the shimpan that sit closest to the ring need to turn around and start moving people back. And that needs to be something that everyone that sits in those seats is briefed upon before they put their butt down.
Totally.
Because that allows these chairs to come in more easily. If we're talking medical personnel, if we have an actual medical staff in a sci-fi future of where sumo is amazing.
Sumo is amazing. We're
Sumo
Yes.
is
Sumo
amazing.
more
Sumo
amazing.
is-
Sumo is more amazing. Like if we're talking about that future, that ringside personnel still needs space to come in. And also these guys are really big. Getting someone up into a stretcher is usually a lateral process. You don't really lift them up, shove the stretcher underneath, and then lift them perpendicularly. You need some space for this stuff, especially with a larger individual.
Yeah.
So I find this super important. And crowd management in these situations has been abysmal. Absolutely.
Yeah, the narrow walkways being like the only way to get down, that like the walkways that are like exactly one wheelchair wide.
Mm.
Like there's just no space. And the Hibikiryu situation, imagine if that had happened with a crowd and not in the ring. Like what if it had happened off of the platform, you know, like into 1.5 rows deep into the crowd or something like that.
And that happens.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it fortunately it is, as far as long as we've been watching, it has always happened that if somebody ends up in the crowd, even if they're hurt, we haven't had an injury severe enough that they're immobilized and in the crowd.
And luckily, nobody in the crowd has gotten hurt.
That's been
Yeah.
my big concern
Yeah.
in the splash zone.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
There was one I wanted to bring up later. I think it actually happened in this same March tournament here, but there was a Shimpan who got kicked in the head and needed some help pretty recently.
Mhm.
But like, yeah, I totally agree. Like these guys are enormous. The crowd is so dense. How come it doesn't happen more often?
Panthro wants screen time.
Yeah, we got two cats on camera right now.
Yeah.
They always know when we're podcasting. So yeah, like I guess
There
why
we
don't
go.
why don't we sum up our like emergency right now changes that we would make? So like Whatta said, I think that yes, we should make a plan, train the individuals should be number one. That's free. That's, that's easy.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're
GSA.
welcome. And then number two, EMT bare minimum, right? Somebody there has
Somebody
to
on
be
standby.
somebody on standby. Like
That'll cost
Man.
a few yen, but
I did pee-wee football when I was 13 years old, and there was an EMT available.
I was going to bring that up. It's like from the time we participate in sports when we're 8, 9, all the way through high school, there's always been a trainer. There's always been some type of a trained medic personnel, whether it's baseball, football, soccer, basketball, whatever sport, there's always somebody there that has medical training in case something goes wrong.
Yep.
So I spent this morning reading a lot about the training of EMTs in Japan and their involvement in the ambulance role. So one thing that is quite common in Japan is that ambulance personnel is not trained medical professionals and paramedics, but rather EMTs, who are usually former firefighters. Today, the amount of ambulance calls outnumber the amount of fires. So in fact, more trained firefighters are engaged with ambulance activities than they are with fire activities. It seems to me that, first of all, this is not optimal, but second of all, in general, I think that it would be quite simple to find like retired fire personnel that could work at sumo events as EMTs at least. I mean, if you have someone with like, let's say double my experience, they're not a paramedic, but that's way better than what we have. And if we can take baby steps to get to the point where we have an actual ringside doctor, that would be great. I would not be a person who's like, oh, they put in EMTs, retired firefighters with some ambulance experience in there. That's below my standards. I want something more. No, every step is a positive step. And I would be happy to see anything done.
Yep, for sure. And in addition to that, just somebody off the street, like physical size wise, is not enough. Like even if it's a trained person who knows what to do, that changes a little bit when the person you have to move around and help and manipulate is 400 pounds. So one thing that we hadn't brought up yet is you got 4 bodybuilding professional athletes sitting right next to you, and 5.
I thought you were talking about us.
Well, I mean,
if I get to watch that much sumo IRL, I'll be quite happy.
No
There
kidding.
you go.
we were when we were in Japan, I think we were still like 100, not 100, like 50 feet maximum or minimum from those bodybuilding professional athletes. But the point kind of stands. Yeah, so you got 4 active sumo wrestlers sitting around the ring. You got 5 former sumo wrestlers of various ages, but like, could be as young as, 30 to 40-year-old. Regardless, you got 9 current or former professional athletes sitting right there, and never are they asked to like help out lifting people up, or it's always, like I said before, the 5-foot tall yobidashi that you get to lean on. It doesn't matter what your accident is, that's what you get.
When it comes to training, this is why I would push for the fact that every single person from the NSK who's involved with these bouts needs to be a part of emergency training. So when it comes to like the protocol, who's delegating what responsibilities to who, I think that every single stable needs to have like emergency practice day every now and then, where like it's a biannual thing. Sure, we lose 1 day of chopping vegetables, but we can prepare for that. And then instead, we spend that day practicing some CPR, running through the protocol, who's doing what. If you're currently the guy sitting there waiting for your match or having just experienced your match, and you're a ringside rickshaw, you help out with this thing. And like, not what do you do, but who do you listen to? That's way more important. Because a lot of these guys are like 15-year-olds who dropped out of high school. I don't expect them to have like the will or the level of interest to be able to learn a bunch of complicated CPR procedures. But like,
we don't need
to?
them all CPR certified. But
yeah,
if you
exactly.
have a boss, if you have somebody who's directing traffic,
exactly.
That's, you're
who do you listen to? Who's delegating? And what are some basic things you would be expected to do so that you are already thinking about them before they happen? Because as I talked about before with the brain freeze in emergencies, a lot of why that happens is because you have to figure out in the moment what you're supposed to do. If you already have been prepared about what I'm supposed to do in certain situations, your body instinctually reacts a lot more. That is why I said things like, oh, if you're sitting in the splash zone, you should be made aware before you put your butt down that if an injury happens, you need to move 1 square back and share a seat with someone else for a bit. Because if that's already been said to you on the way in, instantly what happens, you're like, oh yeah, that's the thing I was told, and you move back.
Yeah. I mean, like that, it may be something where it, if you're told that every day and it never happens, it might fade into the background. But most of the people in the crowd, it's a huge event to go see sumo. So like that's going to be fresh in their mind. That's going to be like, that's the 1 day of that tournament that they get to sit, down in the splash zone. Yeah, exactly. That's going to be something that sticks out. And yeah, that brain freeze. I forgot to mention it before, but like in all of my Boy Scout training, life-saving training and stuff like that, the number one step that we were always told was, once you have like a basic gist of the situation, point at somebody, like call somebody specific out and say, you go call 911. Like that's just as like a break the ice. Once you do action number 1, action number 2 becomes easier. So like directing traffic, whether you're somebody in the crowd, whatever, if somebody is taking charge and has done the first action, then everything becomes easier.
Yeah, if there's a crowd of people standing around watching something happen, something horrible happen, everybody's thinking to themselves, well, surely somebody is calling 911.
Bingo.
Somebody is doing something. But if you have, like you said, like you're going to do this, then it puts the onus on you and it gets done, where you're not where everybody's relying on somebody else to do it and it never gets done.
Yeah. One other point I want to make, more so as we're not going to talk about it much, is accidents and injuries that happen during training, because it's not really something that we have as much access to. And really what we are able to do right now is talk about like the obvious public incidents with horrible optics here. There a lot of these things that we've been talking about, like first aid training for everybody, or at least having somebody in charge of first aid, would also help with injuries and training and getting good responses, getting even injury prevention and stuff like that. But we're not going to talk about it much because it's really hard to. It's less public. You can't really analyze training as well as you can analyze what's actually happening on television as from a health standpoint. So I just wanted to call that out before we moved on here. But so we've talked about like these immediate changes that really should be made to improve the sport. Again, coming from a place of we love the sport, we want it to be better, we want better things for the people that do it. What are some things that are more more ambitious, more like maybe injury prevention type stuff that we can do big time in Whatta's sci-fi fantasy of future sumo. Whatta, go ahead.
Okay, so this is something that I've spent the last 3 years arguing about, and I want to be very, very careful in addressing the controversial nature of some of the things that I'm about to say. I have some very strong opinions about some changes that can be made to sumo. I do not represent these guys. I am a guest. Also, I'm very aware of the importance of things like tradition. The dojo has like a 100-year-long tradition of having been made by the same people with the same methods and to look the same. And I respect all of that. I just happen to personally care more about Richie health. I am fully understanding of people who go like, no, I like it the way it is, and I want to try to find the best possible solutions without changing some of these things. I fall on the other side of the coin. I want to just be very honest about that. Like this,
Yeah.
I don't think that it's unreasonable to not want to change some of these things.
Right. And obviously the thing that we're talking about here is the hottest of buttons in sumo in online sumo arguments here. Lowering of the dojo.
In a sumo Discord I frequent, the like shit posting channel is literally called Lower the Dojo. So like this is such a hot button issue, and like I kind of made it that way. Right?
I honestly don't know why it's such a big issue when there's the clear solution of just put a ball pit around the raised
or impact
dojo.
foam. Put impact foam around
Ball
it.
pit just it's more fun though. It's more colorful.
Fair.
You'll engage the kids. They'll love it. I feel like that's the most easy and elegant solution. I don't know why this wasn't implemented over 50 years ago.
I was going to say, I'm kind of in favor of raising the dojo, because if the Rikshi have long enough in the air to correct themselves, Rikshi always land on their feet. So if
everybody knows Rikshi are cats.
Well, I mean, effectively, but like if you have it higher where they have more time to adjust in the air, I think that might reduce injuries.
Yeah. Okay, so if I can take it away with some actual arguments for lowering the dojo.
All right,
I
feel good. We got the joke part handled. We're
yes.
Good.
All right. That's what I love you guys for. But let's talk Kishino Sato.
But not the real sumo talk.
let's just get a feeler on the air. Who here would have loved it if Kishino Sato was still Yokozuna? Like someone?
yeah.
Anyone? Yeah, it would have been pretty great, right? Kishino Sato's injury, massive factor in what happened here. When I've looked at this video 100 times, I am very convinced this injury does not happen from Haruma Fuji pushing very hard in a certain angle, okay? I am quite convinced that this is an injury that happens when he lands very awkwardly in the crowd after being pushed off the dojo. Mm-hmm. Now, the dojo is what, 40 centimeters tall? I'm pretty sure.
Something like that.
Yeah, 40 centimeters.
Wait, I'm sorry. Centimeters. So I think it's in American units. It's like 2 feet.
Added some more. Yeah,
maybe 2 feet. I think it's a little higher than 40, maybe like 60. It doesn't matter.
Can you doesn't matter. To a global
on Google, it says 34 to 60 centimeters.
Okay.
That's a pretty wide range.
Yeah.
But regardless, that's not important to the point that Wada's making.
Kishino Sato weighs something like 170 to 180 kilograms. Now, another measurement you guys aren't.
I have no idea how much that is.
No.
You've seen, yeah.
No, we know. Go on.
It must be so difficult for you guys to watch sumo with all these stats at the bottom.
Hey, Nato Sumo puts both types of units at the bottom.
So that does help us.
But anyway, for that kind of force and velocity, now I'm not a physics expert. Some of you guys are, as far as I'm aware. But that adds quite a bit of power to the landing, that amount of distance, especially when you compare like it. I've looked at some amateur sumo where the dojo is lowered. And when you just like fall on your back and lower down, the body's sort of like built to be able to handle falling from your feet in most situations, especially if you're not like an old lady. So falling from a dojo 40 centimeters, it also acts more torque to your position than usually falling backwards, right? So you're falling at a more dangerous angle because of the dojo being a certain height. I find all of this quite honestly ridiculous. Now, the dojo is historical, it's great, it's beautiful. I love the dojo. But Rikshi Health, the height of the dojo is, in my opinion, indefensible from a medical perspective.
Yeah. Just for what it's worth, I put together some numbers quite a while ago. I think it was spurred on by Tomokaze's knee injury. I think that's the one. Yeah, but
Those are the most
regardless,
common injuries that happen because of this, right? The ligament
Yeah.
injuries are almost always either because they try to stay in the ring too long because they're trying to not fall off it, Ichinojo style, or they and so they like overextend their knees and they get injured. That's what happens.
Ura style.
Ura style, right? Ichinojo
Yeah.
is the opposite. I confused it. But or it's because they fall Tomokazu style and they like land weird because of the extra force.
Yeah.
And
So physics wise, think of it this way: you got a 6 foot tall man. Center of gravity is roughly 3 feet off the ground. Make sense? Then you got so if you fall flat on your back from standing onto something the same elevation as you, that is X amount of energy, right? But if you have a 3 foot tall dohyo, in addition to the 3 feet from your center of gravity to the ground, if you have another 3 feet, that's double the amount of impact, at least energy wise. I mean, depending on how you fall, the acceleration due to gravity, blah blah blah, it makes it much worse. I don't think there's any way to defend that falling off the dohyo isn't much worse than falling onto the dohyo. What I think would be another thing that we've discussed on this show, at least briefly, is what if you just widened it? What if like the space out to the crowd or so, like roughly an extra 3
John Nomi, just widening that area.
Yeah. Excuse me. Sorry, Whatta. About 1 meter, perhaps wider. That.
Thank you.
That would. So. Here we go. Let me get my chart up here. So for 2 Basho, I gathered a little bit of data about where does the match end. Does the match end either on the ground within the ring? Does it end up on the platform but out of the ring and everyone's still on their feet? What about on the platform but somebody goes down to the ground? Versus like, what if somebody falls off of the dohyo but stays on their feet? What if somebody falls off the dohyo and goes all the way to the ground? So like I categorized matches in this fashion and found that about half of matches end up with everybody staying on their feet. About 25% of the time, people will stay on the platform of the dohyo, but everyone is still on their feet. Just, one guy stepped out. Another 25% of the time, everyone stayed on their feet, but at least one of the guys went off of the platform, but stayed near the platform. So that 25%, if you widen the dohyo by a meter, 3 feet, would have gone from a falling off the dohyo but staying on your feet, tomokaze type injury fall, to a everyone stays on the platform on their feet. So just as rough numbers, that is about how many matches would be would have that type of injury prevention applicable to them.
Yeah, I'll say this, that whether we widen the dojo or lower the dojo, I'm less interested in. That's a practical solution for people on the spot who can look at the arena that they're in and adjust what would be reasonable. I'm mostly interested in doing something to reduce this fall distance to the ground.
Yeah. Anything, just at
anything
least
for this purpose. Yeah, and this came a lot from watching a lot of Amasumo. I spent a lot of 2019 watching some Amasumo, and it was really fun. And seeing the difference in the falls and the traumas. Like, I don't think I saw an injury during that year. And that's not to say that injuries don't happen without this. They do. They absolutely do. Amasumo is less violent than sumo is. So that's another factor, of course. But just when I saw people like get pushed out by some strong Oshi guy, like straight to the chest, and they like rolled backwards 2 or 3 rolls, and I was like, oh, they could roll because there wasn't a bump to like fall down a hill.
Yeah,
that felt so safe for me as a viewer. I felt really ethical watching that, Yeah,
and that's exactly Kizaki Yumi, who retired recently. Anybody remember when that injury happened? Maybe a year ago.
I actually missed this one.
Middle of last year. I feel
thought
like
it was
middle of last year.
Might have been like July.
He was in Jurio, and he did just retire a couple months ago, in part because of this injury. But he exactly what you were talking about, Whatta. He was pushed backwards, and instead of being able to like roll head over heels, he basically his butt hit the ground right at the edge of the platform, and he fell over and landed on his head, basically upside down. Yeah. So that was, and of course nobody helped him up. He was just like laying there for a little bit, and yeah, terrible. all the issues we talked about above still apply.
Please see previous parts of the episode.
Yeah, exactly. But that's that one, and Tomokaze, and to an extent Kisano Sato, like those are just poster child injuries that changed careers drastically purely for the aesthetics of the shape the dohyo is currently in.
I also want to talk about passive injury, because sumo is a sport where you do a lot of fights every single day. And in the Heiya, they have lower dojo, which I appreciate, but you do 15 fights every other month. I once explained to a friend that there is active sumo going on a fourth of the time, because it's half a month every other month, right? That's a lot of your life to spend doing a fight every day. I want to, like, Ichinojo is a guy we talk a lot about because he's giant and he's amazing and he's like my third favorite wrestler. But Snorlax for life.
Snorlax!
I love this guy. I love Ichinojo. His time with Sekiwaka was amazing for me. But this is a guy who steps out voluntarily at the edge all the time. Now, a lot of people call him Sleepy. I call him Sleepy. It's funny. But obviously, this has to do with injury prevention, right? This is something that has been mentioned in this podcast. It's been mentioned in Discord debates a lot. Like, Ichinojo steps out for injury prevention. What is Ichinojo's injury? Spinal cord impact. So he has a broken disc. Now, I can imagine stepping down from a dojo 15 days every other month for half your life ends up causing a lot of pressure on the spine of a guy of that size. Just the step down, even if it's gentle, it's a boom, it's a badoom. And
it's still
passive buildup of injury over time causes problems. I would imagine that not all, but some knee injuries in sumo are caused not by a inciting incident, but by repeated minor trauma.
Yeah.
Micro traumas. And a lot of them come from the height of the dojo. This is why, for example, I would be a little bit happier with a lower dojo than a widened dojo, because I think it would help address some of these micro injuries.
Totally agree. That's similar to like the current discussion in American football about like you don't have to be knocked out to get brain damage over your career. Like lots of and the type of like linemen in particular in American football, every play there is a small amount of head trauma from just the absolute friggin' chaos that is American football line of scrimmage. But sumo is the same sort of deal where like almost every match you're getting a little bit of a headbutt, and that's got to build up too. I think it's probably part of like the tough guy culture of sumo that we don't really hear about the long-term effects of that a lot. But I'm willing to bet that sooner or later there will be like a similar reckoning to what American football is going through right now, where like, all of a sudden we have a few high profile cases where we really discover the extent of CTE in the brains of former wrestlers.
I mean, you guys are pro wrestling fans, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Same story.
So I've never watched pro wrestling, but I watched a lot of YouTube content about pro wrestling because I find it really cool, and because a lot of anime people are very involved with pro wrestling. Okay. And they make a lot of videos about it.
It's good shit.
Yeah. I know about how early these people are dying. A lot of these people, and it makes me very upset. And you guys follow Sumo Follower on Twitter, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And Sumo Follower tends to tweet out whenever a former legendary Rikishi dies, and the age is usually there, and it's like 66 is like the average I'm seeing. Yeah. These people are dying early too. They're not dying. I don't think it's quite as widespread as in pro wrestling, but it's there. It's definitely in that direction. And micro-injuries are part of this. So I would hope that the dialogue can grow more progressive in the future. I also want to talk about one more aspect. I want to talk about the Rikishi Kyokai. Kakiryu, my friend. You are the representative of Rikishi interests in sumo. Now, I'm a Swede, which means that I have a long history of working for unions, okay? This is just how Sweden is. We're this kind of country, right? And when it comes to the rights and health of people who do your profession, I think that the representative needs to be a keystone person in advocacy for these issues. And I would hope that Kakiryu and his successor, if this now, he recently retired, so I don't know if he has to step down from this position or not. Let's go Endo, have some relevance in something. I would hope that whoever has this position can be a leading figure in this, because I want someone out there who can look at sumo and the only thing in their head is the health and safety of the rikishi, because there needs to be someone who argues for someone's case, right? And a lot of times when we have these power structures, the people in charge argue their own case, and then they're in charge of other people, and these people don't get anyone to argue their case. For example, when I'm a summer camp counselor, I, as a leader and as a counselor, often get into conflicts with children. Did I grab a child's arm too hard? Is sometimes an issue that has to be resolved. Hopefully not with me so far, but no, with a counselor. We have a system involved where my boss, the boss of all the counselors, they never are there to argue for the case of the counselor. I argue my own case. I am an adult. My boss is there to argue the case of the child, because the child needs someone to represent them. And now, I really don't want it to come across that I'm calling sumo wrestlers children, but they are in a power structure where someone has power over them, and they need someone to take their side.
It's the same reason that all professional sports in America have unions. There's the NFL players union, MLB,
the only one that does it is esports. Let's get working on that.
Mixed martial arts. Mixed martial arts is terrible for.
And professional wrestling needs it.
Professional wrestling, yeah. So like individual, it's.
I always get very careful talking about unions with Americans, because I know it's a much hotter button issue over there than it is over here.
Yeah, you're definitely speaking to a friendly crowd here, but yeah, that's it's not necessarily something that comes up often on the show. We try to keep that stuff usually in the background, but yeah.
In my case, it's just about advocacy for those who are not in a position of power in a structure. That's it.
Exactly.
So I want to bring up just a couple of things, because I can easily see people getting mad at Whatta, not us, because Whatta said that he is not speaking for our viewpoint.
Yes, of course. It's not us.
I want to insulate Whatta here. I don't think Whatta is saying that, and I think he's already said this, but most injuries are not occurring because people are falling off the dohyo. In fact, my guess is the vast majority of injuries are happening within the dohyo. But this is an avenue that we see that could prevent some injuries from occurring. It could be a small percentage, but we also see that the severity of the injury, I think it's a higher percentage of severe injuries that occur when somebody falls off the dohyo than when it happens inside the ring. Obviously, there's exceptions to that. Hibikiryu happened entirely within the ring.
Yep.
Tamawashi's just reign of terror, breaking elbows.
The Kotonages of death.
Yeah, all happened within the ring. There's nothing we can do about that. You're not going to outlaw the kote nage. You're not going to outlaw all throws in sumo to make sure people can not land on their head.
Yeah.
But something that can be done, and easy solution that people see, lower the dohyo, then Kisei no Sato could be a dominant Yokozuna right now. Tomokaze probably wouldn't be fighting his way back up from Jonidan right now, and could have been in the Sanyaku ranks for a year at this point in time in his career.
No guarantees, but like we still feel like we've been robbed of things because of this thing where we know what would help.
Think of Teru no Fuji. Think of what those knees could be if
this man has diabetes too, though.
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
Didn't he get hit by a car or something around the time of his
death? As far as I know, this man has like gone to hell, survived the 7 days.
Yeah.
He comic style fell down like an open manhole on the street. And...
For all we know, like his descent down the ranks of sumo was actually him going through Dante's Inferno, you know? It's like the first stratum, the second stratum, he had to work his way up again, you know?
Yeah. And one banana peel will undo the whole thing again. So,
no.
Oh God. Hey, Kaiju, I believe in you.
So yeah, lowering a dohyo is a solution that a lot of people feel very strongly about, and I think I would fall on the side of I would like to see it widened as opposed to lowered. I think, as Jake pointed out, could reduce a significant amount of people falling off the dohyo to reduce the chance of those more severe injuries. I would understand why they don't do it. One, because that's how it's always been done, and that's very, very important in the culture over there.
Mm-hmm.
But also, the seats that you're going to be paying for the highest are the ones that are going to be going away if you widen the dohyo.
You cut into the profits.
So that could be another reason why they don't want to do it. But I think the main reason they don't want to do it is the tradition of it. And I wish I knew more. There could be a religious aspect to the raising of the dohyo, as like these men are higher than everybody else from a religious aspect when they're competing on the dohyo. We'd have to go back to our episode we did on the Shinto religion way back when with your wife Katie, Jake. I think we touched on it some there.
A little bit. I think that I think that the inertia of we've always done it this way is probably the biggest factor here. Like that's just what sumo is supposed to look like.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we could. What if we like cut it in half, or something like that? There's other like half measures that would still improve things, and that's worth something.
Mm-hmm.
Sumo
but
has also
like,
not always been fought in a raised dojo.
Yeah, I mean, like
That's true.
I mean, like from the dawn of time, obviously it started like as more of like a festival game, like it wasn't always a sport that's on an elevated platform or anything. But like as Americans, this is something where it gets kind of weird for us because like modern sumo has existed for like a couple hundred years. And to us, like the entire history of our country is like a couple hundred years. So like
and we've only got 10 more to go tops, really.
So.
But I've always heard the joke that like in America 100 years is a long time, but in Europe 100 miles is a long distance.
Oh yeah.
Like there's that perspective of like,
when was the last time you biked to work?
I actually can, but that's just because I intentionally moved insanely close to my office. And then the pandemic hit, so now I'm 10 feet from my office at all times. But regardless, though, like that perspective of sumo has a much bigger history than any other sport that we watch or that we know of. Like it's changes like this year we are going to be adding a 17th game to the American football schedule. And to me that's like, oh my, I know it's stupid, but that's a different discussion.
I hate
but
it so
but
much.
the first
different show, Ryan.
different show. But what sprang to mind when that happened was like, no, but it's always been 16 games like forever, for like hundreds of years, right? No, it's like what?
1978.
Yeah, and like who cares? There are people alive who remember 1978. Ancient wizened sages who remember the 70s.
I was actually just talking to my wife the other day. It's like the 90s for us is going to be like the 70s for people that were born in the 2010s. And that just feels so weird to me.
Yeah. I was born 1996.
Well, I mean, I was 1990, so that's not too bad.
That's
89 bitches.
You at least have memories of pre-2000. Like you're not
quite.
I
have like one memory from then.
You're not quite a baby, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like this, when we say like sumo doesn't want to change anything ever, it does have a lot longer of a history than like we have the perspective to really sink our teeth into and like really understand the perspective fully. So that I think that's worth noting anytime we bring up progressive changes like changing the dohyo or the other thing we have written down here is like moving the crowd back to prevent anything like harmful interactions between the wrestlers and the crowd. Like all these things are just, it's been this way, and it's been this way for a long time, longer than we have the authority to like really question.
So I have one more thing I want to bring up that I think is going to be way less controversial. And this is also something I've never seen cause injury, but it is something that I constantly, every time it is relevant, I go, because something could happen. And you guys sat in these box seats, so you might know what I'm talking about. But these steel bars that stick up from these box seats, if a foot goes under one of those at the velocity that some of these guys are running off the dojo, and now during Corona season, I've seen some of these guys run really far into the crowd area because there's no crowd to block them. And like I saw Endo run out one time, and like that's my favorite guy, so I got really scared. I was like, "Don't step on a steel bar."
Yeah.
Like these things are dangerous. Now, there has to be some way to separate a crowd with something that won't make you trip if you hook your foot under it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but something.
Something like maybe like a plexiglass barrier or something like that. Something that doesn't have a foot-sized gap that, can
Right.
trap some
Yeah.
of these things.
Exactly. They might even help them break a little bit faster, Like,
Yeah.
I would love to see that. We have the technology, people. We have advanced to this point.
So I think at this point, if it works for you guys, let's move on to some more recent high-profile injuries and just talk about like some of the things we've talked about today. If we were, this joke is now entrenched and it's going to stay this way. If we were living in Watta's sci-fi perfect sumo fantasy world, what would happen with some of these other injuries we've seen as far as like the response, maybe even the prevention of them? So why don't we start at the very top here, Kisano Sato. Like let's say that everything was as progressive and Rikshi health focused as possible. What would have happened in that match? So Whatta, you mentioned like, yeah, it's not necessarily what happens in the ring, it's the velocity that Kisano Sato leaves the ring with. That his landing is
the angle of the landing is the massive thing for me. It
Yeah.
looks like, at least, and also because he's landing on like a half on a shimpan and half on like the ground, and like he messes up like some bones in his shoulder, right? It's like the breast and shoulder here.
Yeah, the
I
pectoral.
don't quite
The pectoral.
Yeah, exactly. So like that seems like he's just landed at a bad angle. So with a lower dojo, for example, the angle would be a much less progressed into the backwards position. But even if you have a high dojo in this situation, we would have instantly the shimpan move the crowd back, and a protocol for a response team would be much more quickly introduced. You would have someone talking to Kisano Sato, where does it hurt? What are you feeling? And then a medical EMT or a doctor would step in and take over that role. That is what we've been discussing. And then he would probably be transported out much faster, and 911 would be called faster to help this guy, because this guy is like the most, look, given his status at that point as the newly crowned Japanese Yokozuna, this is the most valuable person in sumo to them. And for them to like not value him as highly as even I value him in this situation, that hurt me.
Yeah.
That was probably a mean way to phrase that, but that's what it feels like to me when I watch this scene.
The video of it, I specifically remember because like you knew it was a big deal instantly, and it's very emotional because you can tell that he knows it's a big deal instantly. But he gets up, he's basically on all fours, and he's just kind of like shaking his shoulder, like he
goes back like this several times.
Yeah.
I can hear Jason Sumo's voice going, "Oh no, no, no!" Because like, you've seen the Jason video of Sumo, and his commentary is like ingrained in my head. Of like, what? No, not Kisano Sato. It's
right. But at the same time that he's doing that, and you see that this is very serious, he's on his own. He's doing this. He's in pain. He's trying to shake it off, like he's done like up until that point in his career, had he even missed a match. Like he was, I think he might have been one of the Iron Men, but regardless, like he's been through injury, obviously.
And the next day he fights the kaiju twice.
Yeah. And like battling through it, and just that's the sumo way.
I mean, it's the greatest story in sumo. It's beautiful, but we then have the most tragic story in sumo afterwards.
Exactly. Yeah. It's definitely. Yeah. I mean, I still want that to be the Hollywood movie that breaks sumo out in the West here, but regardless, like the fact that he's just laying there with nobody to help him, he's just sitting next to these other guys that could very easily help him up, and he's sitting next to all these people that should have first aid training. That I'm not saying that changes the prognosis 100%, but if he's able to have help and at least that would at least improve the optics of it, and seeing them, like you said, the most valuable asset in sumo at the time, and they just don't care, or at least that's what it
or if they care, they care more about the like macho aesthetic of sumo, right?
Yes, exactly.
They care more about the image of sumo.
So I'm watching it right now. What happened? Like, yeah, he falls on the ground. There is like a team of like yobidashi that surround him to kind of help him get up. He never gets back up on the dohyo to do the bow or anything like that.
Okay, I remember that wrong.
And then he is escorted to the back, and he's got a team of yobidashi around him, and he's got a couple of, I think, just I don't know if they are doctors, but like the guys you see in like the blue wind jackets, they might just be members of the JSA, but they're going with him to the back, probably to talk to a doctor or get him some.
That's good. That's
thing.
better than other examples we've seen.
Yeah, I think this is one of the least egregious responses, because for an arm shoulder injury, the most you can do is just hold it in,
Immobilize it.
immobilize
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Which,
I'm gonna have to eat my words there, but yeah, that I definitely remember that differently. I think it might just be like the first few seconds where he's on his own that is just more ingrained in my memory. I think the bigger story for Kisano Sato though has always been this idea that he denied surgery and just was gonna 2 weeks rest, and therefore all sumo injuries are healed, kind of a thing. And it's just like all the other injuries that we've talked about. Like, we can't say for certain. We're not doctors. We don't know. We never like looked at Kisano Sato's arm personally, but like, or actually we kind of did, because we met him when we went to Japan.
We did. We got
Never
the photo
did.
to prove it.
Yeah, I instead of shaking his hand, I went to like feel his pectoral and try and do my own analysis. He wasn't a fan of that. But anyways, the we can't say for certain whether like the surgery that everyone was talking about would have solved the issue, would have mitigated the issue. We don't know. What we do know is that the culture of sumo is that he needed to tough it out, and so that's what he tried to do, and that did not work. We know what didn't work. We don't necessarily know that surgery would fix it, but from a Western standpoint where sports injuries require surgery all the time, it definitely that whole time felt like just yelling at a wall, like, just do the thing that might help. And that sucked. Any other thoughts on Kisano Sato? I know we covered it quite a bit back in the day, but okay. His stablemate Takayasu.
You had to make me remember that one again.
This was the Ghost Basho, the first coronavirus Basho with zero crowd. Takayasu, Kisano Sato, similar kind of like we're both doing a throw position, similar to like Hibikiryu's kind of setup.
I think you said Kisano Sato's Kakuryu.
Did I say Takayasu versus Kisano Sato?
I think you said versus Kisano Sato.
Okay,
yeah.
It was versus Kakuryu. Yeah, my bad. But he hyperextends his leg and goes down. And like the thing that everyone remembers about this is you can hear him yelling in pain, and it's messed up. Oh my
Horrible.
God. Oh. But this one, there is definitely fair criticism in that he just kind of was left laying there, similar to the Hibikiryu situation. It was just like, well, we're just going to wait for him to shake it off and stand back up.
Yeah. Once again, watching it live right now, couple of Yobidashi come up to check on him. Kakuryu obviously immediately kind of looks down, but really there's nothing he can do. I don't really blame the other sumo wrestlers in this. They're
no.
But yeah, there's a couple of Yobidashi, and they're immediately looking to the back. So they're expecting somebody to come out and help them. And it's, once again, one of those JSA members, or he might be a doctor. I don't know. But guy in the blue, like, wind jacket comes out.
I think those are like other former wrestlers or workers or something. But like, if they're actual doctors, even if we were to give them the benefit of the doubt and think that they may be first aid personnel, why aren't they right there immediately? Why aren't they like, I don't know.
Yeah, but what happens is he comes out along with, I'm guessing, Itsuke Bito, and they both just kind of like lift Takayasu up by his mawashi so that he can get his legs underneath of him before he has to walk off the dohyo. And they cut off the video to a Daisho interview right after that match. So you don't actually get to see how he exits the dohyo, but he still needs to get off of the dohyo.
He has to get down.
The chair, which definitely should be handled differently. Yeah. There should be a way that he doesn't need to utilize that leg at all to get to the medical training or the medical care that he needs.
Standing someone with a knee injury up is just generally a bad idea.
Just
you don't need to stand them up.
Because a lot of times what you'll see in the NFL, they'll bring the cart out onto the field, and so that they're not walking anywhere. They have their leg out. It's stabilized in some way, shape, or form.
We have the giant chair. Use the giant chair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and like when you're using the giant chair, don't like assist him in getting up under his own power. You know, they should be like just gently manipulating him with the aforementioned like 10 bodybuilders laying around, you know, like move him into the chair, or better yet, if it was something where he didn't have to bend his knee in a sitting position, you know, if I'm not saying there's enough room for a cart like the NFL, but you know, like something there's got to be a better thing than just toss him in a wheelchair and get him off camera, you know?
Right.
So this one is very similar to Tomokaze, at least response wise. Tomokaze is the next one to bring up. We talked about it before a little bit. He went off of the dohyo, landed on his feet, but being a ginormous man, that doesn't mean that it's completely safe. So obviously in Tomokaze's case, the way that he landed, I don't think there's a great angle of exactly where his feet were positioned, but in essence, the way he landed, his knee blew up.
Yeah. What's specific for me about this one is that this is an injury where, like, if there was anyone with any kind of medical profession watching that live, it's quite obvious what the injury is right away. Like, this is a ligament injury. You can see it in the fall. And so, like, the obvious knowledge of what's happening would be more quickly communicated if there's a doctor, because maybe a layman doesn't think about that. I would hope the sumo wrestlers who've seen a lot of ligament injuries would. But just the information and as I talked about before, the delegation and the protocol, like the person who takes charge and steps up and like talks to the Rikishi, like, and important for here, like, inform him what you saw. Like, Tomokaze's fallen, he didn't see it. Like, with a medical professional, he can get more instant clarity of mind. That would also probably just be, for me, more ethical.
So once again, watching this injury live.
Man, you were quick on the trigger with these videos. Well done.
No kidding.
So Tomokaze falls out of the ring. Immediately, people realize he's not moving. A couple of Yobidashi come to him. You see them immediately looking to the back. So maybe there's a plan in place where the Yobidashi look to the back, and that's the sign, okay, let's help this guy out.
But I remember they stand this guy up, right? Again.
Yeah.
They had to
So
stand
I'm watching it right now. We've got 3 JSA members in always the blue wind jackets, helping him to stand up. But they did bring out the comically sized wheelchair immediately. And so it's to the point now where he's standing up, and I'm just seeing if they do anything where they're able to get him to the wheelchair without him putting any weight on the knee. But
I think it's, if I recall, it's basically the exact same thing as Takayasu.
There's no video of him walking over.
It's just one of those situations where I would just say the wheelchair is actually not good enough. Like, you need a stretcher for
yes.
Mm-hmm.
The thing, like I said before, like a wheelchair, bare minimum, get the kind of wheelchair with like an extension kind of thingy so that you don't have to bend that leg.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
The thing that sticks in my head about the Tomokaze one is his face and the like exploitative almost close up of his knee as they're wheeling him away.
Mm-hmm.
And like you can see from his knee, there's like divots in certain spots where there are supposed to be ligaments. Like it's disgusting. And they just oh, look at that. You know,
I wonder if it was
what happened here?
dislocated.
Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I wonder if it was dislocated, the kney, which can be a very severe injury. I know there was a situation.
Mac knows this one.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Dislocating a patella, that hurts. And you are immobile for quite a while.
Unless you're an anime character and you just pop it right back and you just keep on fighting.
Mac tried to do that.
I actually did pop mine back in place because I said I'm not going to a hospital, and I went bang and hit it back into my knee and ended up needing surgery after that.
And that's the part that made it worse. Yeah.
That was the part that made it worse.
Yeah. Oh.
But yeah, I think it's important to point out all Tomokaze was doing was he had one leg up on the dohyo, the other leg was going off the dohyo. He was just trying to land normally, and his knee exploded, and he's been out for a year.
So that one and the next one, Wakataka Kage, they happened in the same tournament, which is like I mentioned before, that's when I started gathering a little bit of data. In particular, these two stuck out to me because a lower or wider dohyo, even if it took up the same amount of space as the dohyo plus the like aisle around the dohyo, they simply were hurt because of a 3-foot fall. It wasn't that they were going flying several rows deep. It wasn't because they landed super, they weren't thrown and landed on their head or anything like that. It's simply the extra 3 feet of fall made a leg injury that probably wouldn't have happened. It still could have, of course, but Whatta Takakage in that same tournament, this was back when Ryan had dubbed him the new Prince of Sumo because he was undefeated in the top division. And then he awkwardly lands off the dohyo, like sprains an ankle, I think it was.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. He was pushing his opponent, once again, watching live. He was pushing his opponent out of the ring. He jumps off as well, and his foot kind of like gets caught like on like the angled sides of the dohyo, and so it kind of makes his landing a little awkward.
Mhm.
And then as he's getting off the dohyo, he's just kind of like hopping on one foot.
Unassisted?
Down the dohyo. There is one yobidashi at the bottom of the dohyo, so he can kind of lean on a little bit, and then I assume he helps him walk out the rest of the way.
Yeah, those two stuck out to me because of the dohyo debate. Like, yeah, there may not be thousands of injuries that the dohyo debate would impact, but those two in particular, to popular guys, yeah.
And that one, I will say, that's probably not any different than how you'd see it handled in like the NFL. You'd see him wrap his arms around somebody and then hobble off to the sidelines so that he doesn't need to use that one leg. And I will also point out that Whatta Takakage just went 10-5 for Maegashira 2 and has a special prize. So I think me dubbing him as the next Prince of Sumo may not have been incorrect.
It was just premature.
I also want to give Whatta Takakage benefits for having made every single sumo fan a rap god, for being able to pronounce his noun name without any problems. Moving on to Shauna Nomi.
Let's do it. So, those two I wanted to bring up more from a prevention standpoint than a response standpoint. But yeah, let's talk about Shauna Nomi.
So Shauna Nomi is, to my degree, in my opinion, the scariest clip you can watch about sumo, except for Hibikiryu. Shauna Nomi is a guy who, in a mata, like a Ryuden-style mata knockout, just bumps his head against the other guy's head and falls backwards to like a weird kind of angle. This guy then tries to stand up on his own like 4 or 5 times, like he's really drunk, and he keeps falling back down over and over and over again. It is terrifying to watch this video, in my opinion. This guy should not be fighting the bout, straight up. But after some assessment, he keeps saying, I'm okay. Again, we talked about the wrestlers being expected to be this, and they're actually discussing, like, to the respect, the Gyoji seems to be discussing with him, are you really fighting this? Like, we might be able to do something about this. But in the end, he ends up fighting and winning the bout. So this is like a concussion case, right? It's the most obvious concussion you can find. It's not a neck injury, it's just a concussion injury. We have this like chart here from the sumo prevention thing where they list things that would be done, and they talk about immediately instruct the Rikishi to stop moving, like don't try to stand up, just calm down on the ground, and then it's clearly not safe to compete and requires further assessment in a hospital setting. And these are things that need to be addressed. What is good about this situation is that the rule book has been changed. If you suffer a knockout or a concussion during a mata, you do not fight the bout. I don't know if you get an automatic loss. That would
believe
be sad.
you do.
I believe it would count as a
get the
fuso.
automatic loss,
Which means that it is now possible to win sumo in a mata. So all you metagamers out there who don't want to fight a full fight, go in with the head and go in hard, you know?
50-50 chance you're the one leaving with the knockout win.
Yes.
You just sitting at home like, yes, I can be Sandame again. Sanyaku again.
Just go in early. Go in elbow first. Yeah. Boom.
Yeah, no more of these slaps. No more of these harite to the face.
Yeah, no, we go Hakuho elbow style on you.
Ooh.
Yeah.
No,
and that's another one we got on our list because it's a similar situation. It's just not a mata. 8 years ago, Hakuho absolutely KO'd the crap out of Hibikiryu.
This is the clip that made me become a sumo fan. I found this clip and I went, whoa, sumo's awesome. It was a knockout. And I started watching.
Wham!
These days I look back at it like, damn, this clip is horrible.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hakuho did it not quite as severely to Endo recently, if I recall. last couple of years. But yeah, I just went back and watched the Hibikiryu one, and that one is just as clear of a knockout as the Shauna Nomi one here. Hibikiryu's out. Like he's not like unconscious, I should say, but he's stumbling around like he's had too many. He can't stand up on his own. That one, I will say, definitely better response than I remember it being. There are very quickly a couple guys jumping up to like make sure that he's not tipping over.
However, they also make him take a bow.
Yeah, they do make him take the bow. Yeah, exactly. So in that case, I don't think that's particularly egregious, but it still seems kind of tone deaf.
Yeah, he is walking unassisted until they get to the part where his Sukebito can kind of get underneath Miyogiryu's arm. Well, then no, Miyogiryu is walking unassisted. He seems to be a little bit more out of the clouds, but yeah, somebody should probably be stabilizing.
He shouldn't be. Yeah, he shouldn't be walking without somebody at least like hanging onto his arm just to like kind of gauge where he's at. He was way too out.
I think the main thing here is this is kind of where you can put some of the ceremony aside for the guy that is injured.
The health and safety of the sumo community.
But I think the response in getting like he does stand up on his own. Probably should have had like a doctor tell him like, no, buddy, sit down, get your bearings a little bit. But it's not a situation where it was a mata, so they need to like redo the match. The match had started, so they didn't force that.
This is
definitely some improvements, but not the most egregious.
This is where we don't know what happens once they leave the dojo field, right? Like we don't know if they come out there and there's a coach scolding them for their bad sumo, or if they get put aside into a room with a medical trainer who can check for concussion damages. Like again, because I work with kids, I concussions happen monthly in my profession, right? Like kids running, we work with a forest. Kids jumping from rocks, okay? Like stuff goes down.
Kids are the worst. I totally agree.
Yeah. You have to check for eye reflexes, puking, slurred speech. There's so much you need to look at when it comes to concussions. And I just really hope that there's someone who's trained with that outside of the ring. If there's not, bad sumo. If there is, good job, sumo. I hope so.
Oh man, yeah. So, one of the points that was regarding like Shauna Nomi, Hibikiryu, Endo here, like knockouts are not a new phenomenon either. Like it's not like it happens in sumo. It happens a lot more often in like boxing and MMA, because obviously those sports you're trying to do that to your opponent. So like the protocol and the understanding of it has been established to some extent in other sports. I'm not going to say that those other sports are perfect, but like the number one thing that when somebody gets knocked out in mixed martial arts, which, that I keep bringing it up because obviously that's the one that I'm closest to, that I have the most experience with. The number one thing that happens is once somebody gets knocked out or dropped or whatever, the referee decides the fight is over. He gets the winner out of the way. And then like 100% of his attention is on the guy who got knocked out. They take the mouth guard out, make sure that, he's not going to like choke on that or anything. They like make sure his spine is stable. They get a doctor who's like running in already, and we have like 2 or 3 people right there. If the guy tries to stand up and he's still loosey-goosey, they make sure to stabilize him. They like hold him in place. They make sure that he understands that the fight is over. You got knocked out. You're going to be okay. How many fingers am I holding up? Like that stuff is like happening within 10 seconds of somebody getting knocked out. So there's protocol for this elsewhere. We're not reinventing the wheel. Having somebody there to like make sure that the guy doesn't fall over. Sure. But that's like step 0, like there should be more. There should be Shauna Nomi's case in particular. The first time that he tries to get up and it doesn't work, instantly there should be 5 guys around him, stabilizing him, getting him out of the ring immediately as quickly as possible, so that they can analyze what's going on. Making him fight that match after watching him fall over. I don't care that he won. Honestly, I think it's a bad thing that he won because now it encourages that behavior in the future.
Push through, keep fighting.
Yes.
There's another one I want to highlight here, and it's Hidenomi, who got like glass jawed by Kodayuki at some point.
That was like a slap, right? That wasn't even like a.
Yeah,
punch
it was
or
like
a
a
headbutt.
So basically, it was 2016. It was he got slapped across the jaw. I mean, if you watch boxing or at least Ippo, you know about the glass jaw and how it can like shake your head around because the angle starts shaking your head, and that's how the concussion happens. And in this one, the response is actually decent, but I just want to highlight it's another case of like concussion and how that like standardized response from MMA should definitely have been applied to Hidenomi in this situation.
Yeah. Yeah. He looks like he was all the way out for a few seconds at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's of course the couple seconds of hemming and hawing and looking around who's in charge. But yeah, so that one was like as clean of a striking knockout as I've ever seen. Like hit him right on the chin with the
Hey, it's Koto Yuki. He
Yuki.
tapes his hands for a reason.
It's Koto Yuki.
Not anymore.
Nope, not anymore.
No,
I don't miss the rat bastard. He's always been my nemesis.
It's the reason I got to talk to you guys. I made a Koto Yuki joke in your Twitter section.
Is that what made us fall in love initially?
Yeah.
But yeah, so like that one, yeah, there's the hemming and hawing, like I said, but then they actually get him into the wheelchair for that one, which I like that they didn't like force him to stand up and everything, didn't force him to walk out under his own power. So, but yes, it is another example of a knockout and what can be done to handle it. That one, pretty good. Last one I had on the list. If you guys have more, by all means, feel free to bring them up. But Onaruto Oyakata, tweets loading here. This one was, this one was also from March. There's a match that goes to the ground. Both guys are tumbling off of the ring. And basically one of the guys accidentally does a rolling thunder head kick to the Shimpan.
Oh, that's right. I remember that match. I'm like,
yeah.
Yep.
So by that, I mean, he's like doing a somersault and his heel comes around and just like chops the Shimpan right in the face.
Like a flying axe kick.
Yeah. So I think he had like an eye injury from this. This is one where the only way to prevent it would have been not have the Shimpan right there, which is obviously a non-starter.
I mean, this COVID prevention right there. Face mask, boom, he's good.
Maybe if he was wearing like a motorcycle helmet or something, he would have been okay. But yeah, this one there was no loss. There was no loss of consciousness. There was no. It wasn't like they made him get up and wrestle a match or something after getting kicked in the head. But yeah, again, there isn't a ton of film on this one, so like I don't know how long he was laying there on his own, but he was laying there on his own for a little bit. I would love to learn more about this one, but I've been having a little bit of trouble finding news on it. There was a news article about it that I found a translation for, but now that link is dead, so that sucks. But yeah, so again, that one falls more into the category of less preventable but notable, and I know the response wasn't great, but I don't know the specifics of how bad it was. So I'm not going to talk about that one too much more. You guys have any others that you wanted to bring up, or any other any other points on like what could have been done differently on any of these?
No, I think we've kind of run the gambit with the different kind of injury types, and been through my video watching, we've been pretty thorough about what the response was and what we think they could have done differently.
Yep, you're carrying the team here.
I'm always carrying the team, Jake. You don't got to tell me.
I'm driving the bus this episode. Get out of my face. So last thing to talk about here is what is going to happen going forward.
Probably nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
From the standpoint of the JSA, very little. Yeah. I would be surprised. One, I would be absolutely shocked if we saw another incident like Hibikiryu anytime soon. That one, freak accident for sure. But if we did, I would be surprised if the reaction, the response to it was as poor. I do feel like this one has been covered in the news enough that there should be some shaming.
I think
I don't
similar
expect
to
it to be perfect.
Shauna Nomi one, which happened fairly recently, there was plenty of shaming that came to them, and so they immediately came out with the half-assed policy that they had. Because I still think I think it's up to the I don't remember the exact.
It is up to the wrestler.
It's up to the wrestler.
But I remembered we weren't exactly 100% thrilled with the results, but they did something.
They did something.
Something is often better than nothing. So hopefully, similar situation, we get an announcement. It's like, yeah, this is what'll this is our procedure if this happens next time. Hopefully, they have shown recently in the past that they are willing to do some changes in the interest of Rixie health.
As I said previously, I really want to press on this. Something is better than nothing. We've talked about a lot of things today. We talked about a lot of really ambitious changes. We talked about hiring personnel. But literally, if I see like a Sumo follower tweet that is like, today Rixie are gathering for Injury Prevention Day to educate themselves on what they can do in these situations, I'll like tweet 20 times about how happy I am about that.
Success!
Yeah, like something's going on, some kind of preparedness and protocol, because that's really what I'm pressed on. The thing we brought up at the beginning of the episode, the need for protocol, who's in charge, and training to get rid of brain freeze in case of emergencies. That's number one. That has to happen.
Yeah. I do want to correct us from a minute ago there. It is not up to the wrestler to decide if it's not like, are you okay to continue in the Shauna Nomi case? It's not his decision, but it is still a loss if he cannot continue, and thus the incentive is still on the wrestler to show that he is okay. So,
okay.
Yeah, so nuance there. It is still on the wrestler to hide it, I guess.
Yeah. If we had our druthers, it like that knockout would happen, and then the sheepon would say, "Okay, nope, you lose, you cannot compete.
Yep, done.
Go to the back, cease, get some help."
Or better yet, like there's no, other than like tradition, which obviously is a pretty big reason. Other than tradition, there really isn't any reason that we can't have non-standard records. You can have like ties in most sports.
I mean, Sumo used to, yeah. They had a lot of different like ties, and I think they had like stuff for like if somebody was injured, it was kind of as this result.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact history of it, but yeah, they had stuff like that, and don't know why.
This is why on Sumo DB there's a whole bunch of letters you can see behind certain bouts, and there's like white circle, black circle, white square, black square. We know those, but you can find triangles, and I got super freaked out, and it wasn't like a giant research spree of like, what is this triangle?
Yeah,
you know?
What are you?
You could have records for a tournament that has like 4 numbers in it. You know, like
it's strange.
And I get it that it's cleaner, it's prettier, it's, you know, if everyone has 2 numbers or absences, you know, like whatever, but like what is to me it seems like if that happens, it should be the equivalent of like a no contest in other combat sports. It's like, this match doesn't happen for either one of your records, it just counts as like effectively a draw. So I don't know, I feel like that kind of thing would make more sense, and it would remove the incentive from the wrestler to hide his symptoms and power through injuries, which again, that's one of the main things that we would want, because we want the best for these competitors. So all that said, though, we're not expecting that, certainly not because we made a podcast about it, but we're not expecting a lot of action from the JSA here. What we are expecting and hoping for, and have already seen, is action from the community to make sure that our voices are heard as much as we can. We're going to put out a podcast to both of our listeners. We have
Whatta's parents.
Yes.
Whatta's parents are going to listen. Probably my wife. But whatever. But no, not your wife. No, she doesn't care.
No.
That's ridiculous.
But we mentioned earlier, Taka Gaijin has been active on this. Search Facebook for Campaign for NSK Injury Protocols. That's a new group that has been started that has already sent out an open letter or 2. Also, you can find Hibikiryu's contact information if you would like to send a letter of encouragement. I think that's probably something that we should do as a show, at least gather attention to it. So go look for that. This page hasn't gotten a ton of attention yet, so hopefully us calling it out will help. But it's just set up as a good place to gather so that we can organize thoughts. If we get any responses to these open letters, that's where that will be. We got another group like that as well, started on Twitter. Let's see, I'm going to look up what that exact page title is.
While you do that, I just want to say that I think Hibikiryu would be very pleased if the Yokozuna Deliberation Council West honored him as honorary Yokozuna for his ability.
We will take it under advisement.
We'll convene and see if that suggestion goes
YDC
through.
West.
He would be the first one to get a belt from us. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is also Campaign for NSK Injury Protocol. Same name on Twitter and on Facebook. But yes, so like I said, though, both of those are just gathering places to make our voices heard as much as we can. So I encourage you to follow both of those, post any ideas you have. If there is any direct contact that we have with anyone in the sumo community, that's where we want it. And just keep talking about it. I made a tweet that was like half joking that, like, you know, like one of the weird cross sections of my silly niche interests is I'm also big on ancient Roman history. So there's a very famous line, Cato the Elder always thought that Carthage was like the biggest enemy. So every speech, it doesn't matter what he's talking about. If he's speaking in the Senate, at the end of his speech, he goes, "Oh, and also I think Carthage should be destroyed." Like, it doesn't matter the topic. He's like, you know, like, here's what I think about our, you know, our sewage system, and we should destroy Carthage. So like, I kind of want that to be like, like the famous phrase is Carthago delenda est. So he would just tack that onto the end of his speeches or whatever. But like, I kind of think that Hibikiryu, we're not gonna have a better mobilizing event that will, you know, get us off our butts to do what little we can, like this one. So I want this one to be brought up as often as we can. Anytime there's news, I want us to share it with each other, get it out in the communities. It's a big deal, and I really want this to be something that's a call to action for as many people as possible. The other thing that that we're going to do as a podcast is that I have a family friend who actually had an almost the same situation kind of injury in American football. If you've ever heard of Chris Norton, he's actually got a documentary on American Netflix about his recovery.
About his American injury.
Yeah.
I say American Netflix because, like, you know, it's different
VPNs and
different stuff's available depending on what country you're in.
Yeah.
In America, you can find his documentary. Whatta, good luck. But he had a similar injury where, you know, it was a vertical impact, and he did not have feeling below the neck. He was, and he talks about this all the time. Like, he's actually a motivational speaker now for people that have had similar injuries. And his big thing is like the equipment that he had access to, the doctors he had access to, the instant response. He was airlifted to a hospital straight from the field. Like, it was everyone pulled out all the stops. And because of that, and because of the type of injury that he had, he's been able to recover partial function. Like, he was able to actually walk down the aisle at his wedding. That's like, that was
spoilers for the movie, Jay.
I was about to say, hey.
But like the kicker here is because it happened during a NCAA sanctioned event, it's covered by the NCAA insurance. And because of that, he was able to get access to the absolute best care that a human being could have for this kind of injury. And he has spent he's dedicated his life now to making sure that as many people as possible have that access, because that is, you know, part of what he credits for, you know, the amount of recovery and the amount of, you know, frankly, for, like, you know, it's a life-threatening injury when this kind of thing happens. So like, that care is extremely important. I sent him an email, and we're going to have a chat, and I'm hoping that it can either be a blog post. We can get his thoughts on this injury, and, you know, what it is specifically about his the access to care that he had that has been so helpful to him. If possible, you know, it just depends on his availability. If you know, if I can, I'll try and get him try and get a Zoom call. Maybe we can get some audio out of it. But either way, he's one of the most uniquely qualified people to talk about this kind of thing that I know. So I have reached out, and we're going to have some sort of content with his input on it. So keep an eye out for that in the next few weeks. What else? Like, we've been talking on like I said, on Twitter with these new groups. We're keeping the word active. I just encourage everybody to do the same.
If you're in a Discord community about sumo, please speak up about this. There's so many Discord communities about sumo these days, and I'm involved in like 2 of them. I spent some time moderating one of them for a while. And this is like one of the forums we're talking a lot. So as someone who comes from that ground, you know, like I want that kind of community to be a positive factor in this. So please, speak seriously about this and be Rikishi health oriented with your priorities.
Exactly.
That's what I want to encourage.
And the reason is we love sumo. We love the sport. We love the history. We love the mystique. We're speaking up about it because we want to see it to continue forward. This is huge for us. We want this to continue. We want the love for the sport to grow, and we want to make sure that the Rikishi and the Sumotori that are competing in it are taken care of.
It's just so important. No one is trying to destroy sumo. Like that is so important to press on. What Max says is really, really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're not like boycotting or anything like, and that's something that we should mention as well. Like as fans in the West, we don't pay for anything really. We just get like YouTube clips and news articles and Sumo DB and stuff like that. These are all things that are free to us. Just
we
would
pay if there was an option.
We would.
Yes.
Exactly. If we had an option that wasn't like, you know, pay for an entire, what is it? Like we have to pay for an entire like cable subscription or something. That's like the only technically legal way for us to watch all matches or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if it's available.
Yeah. Regardless, it's nothing that is a realistic option for us to contribute monetarily to sumo. So the English language sumo community has just found our ways around it. Us boycotting means nothing because they don't get any money from us. Like that's
we hurt ourselves because now we're not watching the sport that we love.
And the NSK goes on without noticing. Exactly. So like it's not like we're saying that we have any sort of monetary power to influence this. So that's why we have to use whatever soft influence we can and just try to protect the sport we love. And again, for anyone from the NSK listening, we weren't kidding. We would pay money. We are happy to pay a realistic amount of money to have access to this. We want to contribute. We want to have like more skin in the game here, but like, come on, man, just give us like a quick monthly subscription for a few bucks.
We want these matches on a service where they're not deleted 2 bouts afterwards.
Yeah. But
we had watch parties at 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning for the entire event. It's like, dude, we will pay the money to make this happen.
Yeah. But yeah, all that said though, sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I don't know about you guys, but I'm personally going to be picketing outside the Kokugikan until ball pits are instituted outside of the dojo.
I'll follow my national predecessor, Greta Thunberg, and I'll sit outside with a sign every day, you know.
Not quite as noble a cause, but I appreciate the enthusiasm.
Yes, so I like the enthusiasm.
Oh, man. Well, if you also care about Rikishi health, please tell us in a 5-star review on iTunes or what have you. How was that, Ryan? Was that a good?
That's Ryan.
You're learning from the master. I like it.
Yeah. Thank you, master. You've taught me well. So yes, leave us a review. Leave us your thoughts. This particular episode, of course, is a little bit more, like I said at the top, kind of a bummer. I know, but it's important. It's a big deal to us. It means a lot to us. If you do want to leave a review, mention this one. You know, this is the kind of content that we want to provide because we do think that, you know, something like this might help keep discussion going on this, not let it be yet another forgotten injury. So do leave us a review. We do appreciate that. Other social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all that, and our blog. Mac, actually, why don't you tell us about the blog? You just put something up.
Yes, it did. So most recently, I reviewed the 15th Texas Sumo Classic and all of the amateur sumo that's going on down here in Texas. And it was great. It was an excellent showing. So I have a review of that up on our blog. Go check it out.
You got like a bracket and everything up there?
Very, very in-depth, very hard work that Mac put into this. So I very much appreciate if everybody check that out because a lot of work went into this.
Wait,
Ryan's just scrolling through it like, oh my God, there's so much stuff here.
I just, I keep scrolling and it just keeps going.
Yes.
Is the Texas Sumo Classic a real event or is this like a Whatta Gustav?
Oh, no. This is
real.
No, this is a real.
I saw that notification and I thought it was like a review for one of your made up.
No.
That's why I didn't click it. Oh, okay, cool.
Oh no, we've poisoned the well.
Yes, our trickery. What have we done?
Mac, you remember the phone number off the top of your head? Why don't you take us home there?
All right. Well, if you have any questions, comments, or corrections, drop us a line at grandsumobreakdown@gmail.com or give us a call at 805-613-7866. That's 805-613-SUMO.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for joining us, Whatta. We definitely
thanks for having
appreciate the medical experience and all that. It's good to have not just the four regulars shouting into the wind. We want to get more voices, so we really do appreciate you joining us.
Hey, I'm very happy to be here. You guys have very much brightened my experience with the sport of sumo since the second year of me watching it. I think you guys do a great job, and I'm a fan for a reason. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Okay, I think we should move forward with the bid for Whatta being a backup Fleric. I think this is really something we need to consider seriously now.
I will second and probably third that on behalf of Fleric.
Yeah, there you go. And he doesn't listen to episodes after the fact, so he'll never know. That's fine.
Hey, I love being on podcasts, so whenever you guys want a guest, I'll be happy to be here.
We'll just slide Whatta in, have him say that this is Fleric, and then just see what happens. Just see what happens.
We just need to get the sweatshirt with the hood, and we got this.
Yep.
Hey, they're back there in the little cabinet. I have a whole
There you
bunch.
go.
Yeah, just dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Next time you're
There
on
you
the
go.
show.
Yeah.
Whatta, so technically, Fleric is still currently under punishment as he has not
Ooh.
done his song yet, which means I am still Fleric's Yokozuna. So if you are truly Fleric's backup, there are two words that I would love to hear from you.
Don't do it.
Ryan, I have been bullying you in our conversation for like the past 3 years. I'm not going to break my Ryan is evil stick now. Okay? So
I'll remember that.
Yeah.
I'm the person who drives the bus, and who knows if you're ever going to see this podcast again. And as long as I'm here, that might not happen.
Yeah, Ryan's making a little note here on his ledger.
if I have anything to say about the American bus institution, then I'll be back later. But as far as I know, your country doesn't really do buses that well. So you know, no respect for you. I'm sorry.
Well, now that
But you're great as a podcaster.
now that Watta's talking shit about our public transportation system, I think we got to call it. We'll
Yeah.
we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for listening, and again, please do speak up. Please keep this conversation going. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Whatta.
Thank you for listening to Grand Sumo Breakdown. Until next time, throw your salt high
And keep moving forward.